I still remember the day I finally found the courage to look him in the eyes and ask, "Are you interested in MI's sister? Is that what's happening inside our house? Because if it is, you need to tell me. We need to fix this." But back then, I wasn't the woman I am today. I met him through his family of deaf. I was just a teenager taking private tutoring lessons with his aunt. I was 18, he was 23. He lived in Denver, Colorado, while I was from a small town in rural Kansas. Back then, we didn't have social media like people do now, so we'd write each other letters, sometimes spend hours on those expensive 3-minute calls that felt like a lifetime. And I fell for him hard. He treated me well, he respected me, or so I thought. Everything started to shift when I moved to Denver for college prep classes. My family had always been very traditional about education, get good grades, get a degree, build a future. So when I graduated high school at 17, my plan was simple: find a place to rent near campus, work part-time, study full-time. But his mother pushed me to stay with them instead. "Save money, stay here, we're family," she'd say. So I did. I stayed in their house for about 30 days. But I never felt comfortable. There was something twisted about the relationship between him and his mom. It was almost like she acted more like his wife than his mother, the way she talked to him, the way she treated me. It made my skin crawl, and her cruelty was subtle, disguised as kindness. I remember one night she sent me to her brother's house for dinner. She gave me the wrong address, the wrong bus route. I ended up alone, after dark, in a dangerous neighborhood I didn't know at all, rundown houses, empty streets, not a soul in sight. I was terrified. Her husband, my boyfriend's father, must have realized what she did. He found out where I was and came looking for me. If it weren't for the bus driver feeling sorry for me and staying with me until someone came, I don't know what would have happened. She'd mock me too. She'd call me country bumpkin behind my back because I was from a small town, like I was too naive for her city life. And the worst part? My family wasn't poor or backward at all. They gave me everything they could. But she made me feel small, unworthy. Eventually, I found my own place near the campus. It was a huge relief to move out of that house, away from the constant manipulation and the feeling that I was being watched. Things were good for a while. I was working, studying, living on my own terms. But then one Saturday after my shift, he showed up at my workplace. I was standing outside, waiting for him. He arrived drunk, covered in mud, said he couldn't go home to his parents because they didn't know he drank that way. He asked if he could crash at my place. I didn't have the heart to say no. That night turned into many more. He'd crash at my place often, he'd drink, promise me it was just once in a while, but it never was. I was working so much to pay rent, and he always had a place to fall back on, his parents' house. But it felt like he wanted mine to be his escape. He finally graduated and got a job offer in a small town in Oregon. We were engaged by then. He begged me to move with him. I told him I wouldn't move unless we were married. I wasn't about to give up my life for him without commitment, so I did it. I left my life behind, my job, my classes, to build something new with him in a city where I knew no one. It felt romantic at first. He'd say, "Why don't you focus on photography? You're so good at it. It makes you happy, right?" So I quit law school, started studying art and design, built my portfolio, worked in photography studios and local magazines. Meanwhile, he was the provider, the man with a steady job, and the more dependent I was, the more he seemed to like it. But as the years went by, his drinking got worse. He became controlling. He wanted my hair a certain color. If I changed it, he'd rage for days. He'd complain about my clothes, said they were inappropriate or cheap looking. And then the mind games began. I have this habit. I hate wearing shoes inside the house. I always leave them by the door, but somehow they disappear. He'd hide them, my clothes too. When I asked where they were, he'd tell me I was imagining things, that our house was haunted, that spirits were messing with me. I started believing him. I brought people over to pray in the apartment. I was so afraid of my own home. I was losing my mind, anxious, gaining weight, not sleeping. There was a time when my mom had to come stay with me because I was too afraid to be alone. I'd say, "Mom, I know I left my shoes here by the door, now they're gone. I swear I'm not crazy." But he made me feel like I was When I finally moved out of his parents' place and into my own tiny apartment near campus, it felt like I could finally breathe again, at least for a while. I kept telling myself that love would fix everything, that his drinking would stop once he felt secure. But that was just one of the many lies I told myself back then. After he graduated, he got this job offer in a small town in Oregon, somewhere quiet, where he said we could start fresh. We got married, packed up my entire life in a U-Haul, and drove west together. I left behind my friends, my job, my classes, everything that made me feel like me. But I believed in him. Or at least, I believed in who I thought he was. At first, it felt like a new adventure. He'd come home with flowers, kiss my forehead, tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. He told me to give up my law classes for good and pour myself into photography full time because, as he put it, no wife of mine needs to stress over a career. I'll take care of you. And for a moment, I actually believed that was love. I enrolled in design courses at a small local college, picked up gigs shooting weddings and senior portraits. I loved it, the art, the creativity. But as soon as my confidence grew, so did his resentment. The more independent I felt, the more he'd find ways to pull me back down. That's when the drinking got worse. It wasn't just the occasional beer with friends, it was hidden bottles, secret stashes, the smell of whiskey on his breath every other night. He'd come home angry. Or worse, silent. Those silences were the most terrifying. I never knew when the rage would come. He started controlling little things, how I wore my hair, how I dressed, who I spoke to. I remember once I dyed my hair a lighter shade for a photo shoot. He didn't speak to me for 3 days. When he finally did, he grabbed a fistful of my hair and said, "I don't want to see this color ever again." I laughed it off at first, but inside I was already breaking. And then came the mind games. I'd get home from a long day shooting a wedding, kick off my shoes like I always did, but the next morning, they'd be gone. My jackets, my scarves gone. I'd ask him, "Did you move my stuff?" And he'd smile, shake his head, and say, "Honey, maybe you need to see someone. Maybe you're losing it." Sometimes, he'd whisper that the apartment was haunted. He'd tell me there were bad spirits in our walls. He'd say, "Maybe they're moving your things because they don't want you here." And I started to believe him. I was so sleep deprived, so anxious that I'd invite friends from church to come pray over every room. I even slept with a Bible under my pillow. But nothing changed. Because the evil wasn't the walls, it was him. He'd drink until he was too wasted to stand, then collapse in the bathroom. More than once, I found him passed out with his head in the toilet. I was so afraid he'd choke to death that I'd stay up all night just to make sure he kept breathing. Meanwhile, I was working multiple jobs trying to pay the bills he was supposed to help with. When I think about it now, it's insane how normal it all felt at the time. There were nights I'd come home late from a photo shoot or a class, and our living room would be packed with his drunk buddies, beer bottles everywhere, loud music blasting. Sometimes strangers would be passed out on our couch. It wasn't my home anymore, it was his kingdom, and I was just a servant cleaning up after his chaos. And yet, I kept trying to believe he'd get better. I'd make excuses for the bruises on my arms when he'd grab me too hard. I'd tell myself he was stressed from work, that he just needed help, that he loved me. I was so scared of what people would say, my parents, my sisters, everyone back home. I didn't want them to know how bad it really was. One night, I remember calling my mom in tears. She was miles away in Kansas, but she offered to come stay with me for a while, and she did. She sat with me in my tiny kitchen while I sobbed over shoes that kept disappearing and clothes I could never find. She didn't know what to say. Because how do you tell your daughter she's not crazy when the man she loves is trying to convince her she is? After my mom went back home, I tried so hard to hold things together on my own. I kept telling myself it would get better, that if I just loved him enough, prayed enough, maybe he'd finally see what he was doing to me, but the truth was he didn't want to see it. He liked the power. He liked the control. I was juggling college classes in Portland and my freelance photography gigs, trying to build something for myself while he seemed determined to tear me down. He hated that I was working. He'd say things like, "No wife of mine needs to be out there hustling for pennies. I provide for you. That's my job." But the truth was, he didn't provide, at least not the way he made people believe. We were living in this spacious apartment that looked perfect on the outside, but inside, it was a nightmare. I'd come home from my night classes at 11:30 p.m. and find him drunk. His friends passed out on the floor, empty bottles on the counters, trash everywhere. Some nights, he'd be curled up in the bathroom, throwing up for hours. I'd sit on the cold tile floor beside him, praying he wouldn't choke on his own vomit. And then came the games that made me doubt my own sanity. I remember one weekend I was sweeping the living room when our little dog tore open a trash bag and scattered garbage everywhere. He stormed in, furious, and shoved me so hard I fell forward, broom still in my hand. The pain shot through my back like a bolt of lightning. That was the first and only time he ever hit me. When I turned around, stunned, I looked at him and asked, "Why? Why would you do that?" And he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "What are you talking about? I didn't hit you. You're losing your mind." I remember the tears that burned down my cheeks as I ran into the guest room where my friend, a classmate staying over for the weekend, was hiding. She was crying too. I asked her, "Please tell me he hit me. Please tell me I'm not crazy." I lifted my shirt and she just stared at the bruise forming on my back, her hands trembling. She said, "I heard it. I heard the punch. I see it now. He did it." I told him I was going to call the police. He begged me not to. He promised he'd change. He cried, told me he'd get help, go to church more, be the man I needed him to be. And just like that, I stayed. Because I was too ashamed to tell my parents the truth, that the man they thought was my safe place was actually my prison. Things went from bad to worse when he lost his job. They let him go because he kept showing up late and hungover, though he told everyone it was because the company was downsizing. My family even helped him land another job in Seattle, hoping a fresh start would fix him. It didn't. He kept drinking. He lost that job too. And then the comments started, the ones that cut me open little by little. He'd say things like, "Your body's disgusting. You need to lose weight." So I'd lose weight. Then he'd say, "Your hair is ugly. Your clothes look cheap." Nothing was ever good enough. No matter what I changed, he always found something else to hate about me. His mother was still in the picture too, still playing her cruel games. Whenever we visited her in Colorado, she'd find ways to humiliate me. She'd hide my clothes. Once, she told me someone broke in and stole my hat. When I asked her why she never called the cops, she just shrugged and said, "Don't worry about it. Just buy another one." I started bringing my suitcase with a padlock whenever we stayed with her because I didn't trust her for a second. And every time I begged him not to make me go back there, he'd say, "Either you come with me or you stay home alone. I'm not visiting my parents without my wife." So I'd go. And every time I'd come back feeling smaller, more broken than before. People in his family used to whisper that if I ever got pregnant, his mother would find a way to ruin it. I was terrified. I had health issues that made it nearly impossible to have kids anyway, so when the doctors told me I'd probably never conceive, he latched onto that. He told me we'd never have kids of our own, that we'd finish raising my younger sister instead. And back then, I thought that was sweet. I thought, he cares so much about my sister. He wants her to feel safe with us. I didn't know that what he really wanted was a pawn. Someone young, someone he could mold, someone he could turn against me. So my little sister moved in with us. Back then, she was just 18, fresh out of high school, trying to figure out her own life. He made it sound like it was for my own good. He said, "You're always so alone when I'm traveling for work. You need someone here, and she needs a stable place too." He wasn't wrong about the traveling part. His new job had him gone for weeks, sometimes months. 1 year out of 365 days, he was home for maybe 70. The rest of the time, he was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't see what he was really doing. So having my sister there felt like comfort. She was like my own child. We didn't have kids not without treatments I couldn't afford. So I thought, we'll help raise her. We'll give her what we couldn't have. It sounded noble, loving. It was a lie. When he was gone, it was just me and her. We'd cook together, watch movies late into the night, plan for her college classes. She helped me with chores. We went to church together. For a while, it really felt like family. He even stopped drinking for a bit, got more involved at church, joined the men's group, acted like a perfect husband in front of everyone. He knew exactly how to wear that mask. But the truth was, Behind closed doors, he was worse than ever. He hated that I wanted to work. Every time I tried to pick up more photography gigs or help manage my small home baking business, a side hustle I loved, he'd sabotage it. He'd say, "A man like me can't have a wife who sells cupcakes. It's embarrassing." He made me shut it down, just like that, no discussion. It didn't matter how much it hurt me to let go of something I built with my own two hands. Every little thing I did that made me feel strong, he found a way to destroy it. If I was too happy, he'd punish me with silence. He'd go days without saying a single word to me, ignoring me like I didn't exist. I'd beg him to talk to me, to tell me what I did wrong. He'd look me dead in the eyes and say, "You know what you did." But I never did. He liked it that way. I remember the day it all started to unravel. I'd been on antidepressants for months by then. My doctor in Portland had diagnosed me with severe anxiety and panic disorder. There were nights I'd wake up gasping for air, my skin covered in hives, my hair was falling out in chunks. I'd find my sister outside my bedroom door, sitting on the floor, scared to go back to her room because she said she heard strange noises when he was home. He'd take her to the grocery store with him when I was too sick to leave the house. At first, it didn't bother me. I thought, of course, she needs to eat too. He's helping. But then it became a pattern. He wanted her with him all the time. He'd say, "You rest. I'll take her. It's better this way." And I, drowning in my meds, in my panic, in my confusion, I let it happen. One night, I planned a weekend getaway. Just the three of us. Maybe, I thought, if we left the house, got some fresh air by the ocean, we could fix whatever was rotting between us. So we booked a cheap little beach motel down in Lincoln City. He packed up food and drinks from home, said it would save us money. I didn't think twice. We got there late. I ate something he brought. I still don't know what was in it, but within an hour, my whole body shut down. I couldn't keep my eyes open. It felt like I was floating away. The last thing I remember is my sister sitting at the edge of the bed, looking at me with this blank stare. When I woke up, hours had passed. The room was empty. He and my sister were gone. When they finally came back, they acted like nothing happened. "You fell asleep. We didn't want to wake you," he said, grinning like he'd done me a favor. But deep down, something inside me snapped. I knew. I didn't have the proof, but I knew. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every look they exchanged, every whisper I couldn't quite hear. And every time I confronted him, he'd call me crazy. He'd say I needed more pills, that I was imagining things, that I was broken. But in my bones, I knew I just didn't have the strength yet to face it. It wasn't long after that beach trip that the panic attacks came back with a vengeance. I'd be in the middle of cooking dinner and suddenly feel my chest tighten, my vision blur, my hands go numb. One night, I felt like my throat was closing up. I thought I was dying. My sister was the one who drove me to the ER that night because, of course, he was too busy. The doctor told me what I already knew. I was drowning in anxiety. He handed me a business card for a local psychiatrist in Portland and said, "You need help, and you need to protect yourself." I remember sitting in my car afterward, clutching that card like it was a life raft. I started therapy. I got on new meds. For a few months, I felt like myself again, lighter, stronger, more like the woman I used to be. I went back to the gym. I lost the weight he always said made me disgusting. I booked a few photo gigs on the side when he was traveling for work, and for the first time in years, I caught myself smiling in the mirror. But the better I got, the worse he became. It was like he couldn't stand to see me healthy. Every day, he'd find a new way to chip away at my confidence. If I wore something cute, he'd say, "Who are you trying to impress?" If I made plans to meet an old friend for lunch, he'd sulk for days. And when he really wanted to hurt me, he'd bring up my sister. He'd say, "At least your sister appreciates what I do. She's grateful, unlike you." It made my stomach twist every single time. He'd control what I could and couldn't do in my own house. He'd come home from a trip, and the first thing he'd do is check my bank statements. If he saw that I'd spent money on myself, he'd say, "That's my money. You don't get to waste it on your silly hobbies." One night, he offered to do the grocery run and told me to stay home and rest. He took my sister with him like always. I watched them pull out of the driveway, my gut screaming that something was horribly wrong. But what could I do? I was sick, drugged up on antidepressants, and trapped in that house like a ghost. When they got back, my sister walked straight past me, went into her room, and locked the door. I knocked. I could hear her crying on the other side. He told me, "Leave her alone. She's had a rough day." But I couldn't. I needed to know. So I cornered him in the kitchen. For the first time ever, I didn't swallow my fear. I looked him dead in the eyes and asked, "Are you interested in my sister? Is that what's happening inside our house? Because if it is, you need to say it now. We need to fix this." He didn't even flinch, he just laughed. This cold, low laugh that sent chills down my spine. Then he said the words that made my blood run cold. "You're crazy. You're imagining things again. Maybe you need to go back to your shrink. I'm a man of God. How dare you even suggest something like that? Do you know how this makes you look?" He held up his Bible like a shield, like it would erase the truth. He threw the church, the Sunday services, the men's group, all in my face like some holy armor. He called me broken, ungrateful, disloyal, and the worst part, for a split second, I almost believed him. That's how deep his poison ran. The next day, he told me he wanted a divorce. Not because he felt guilty, but because, in his words, "You're a disgusting excuse for a wife. You're nothing without me. I just needed to prove it to you." I felt like I was dying inside, but I said nothing. I remember dialing my therapist at 2 a.m. that night, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. She said something I'll never forget. "The problem is not that you're too much. The problem is that you've been made to believe you're not enough." The next days were a blur. My sister started packing her bags. She said she needed her own space. My mom came to help her move her stuff out. I sat on the couch like a ghost, watching them carry boxes of her things, things I'd bought her, furniture I'd put together with my own hands out of my house, piece by piece. And him? He stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching me lose everything while he smirked like the devil himself. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that once my sister moved out, the nightmare was over. But it wasn't. If anything, that was just the start of the final storm. The night she left, he told me we needed to talk. He said he'd wait until she was gone so we could clear the air. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the bathroom door, listening to the sound of the shower running. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. When I finally stepped out to grab a glass of water, I saw him standing in the hallway by what used to be my sister's room. The door was wide open, her stuff was gone, but he was just standing there, staring at that empty space like he'd lost something precious. Then he turned to me, and his face, God, I still remember that look. It was like he was seeing me for the first time, and he hated what he saw. He started yelling, throwing words like knives. I tried to get away, but he cornered me in the hallway. I ran. I locked myself in our bedroom, shoved a chair under the handle, grabbed my phone with trembling hands. I called my therapist. I called my best friend. They both told me the same thing. Get out. Now. I knew they were right. I knew I couldn't spend another night under that roof, but he always knew exactly how to twist my mind. He'd bang on the door, then suddenly change his voice, soft, gentle, calling me baby, like he hadn't just tried to break me into pieces minutes before. That split personality was the worst part, never knowing which version of him I'd get. Would it be the monster who screamed at me in the car, parking on empty roads at night just to hurl insults with the windows rolled up so no one could hear? Or the sweet husband who'd kiss my forehead when I was sick? That night, by some miracle, I found a moment when he wasn't watching. I grabbed my coat, shoved what little I could into a tote bag, and ran. The car keys were sitting on the table by the front door like a sign from God. I snatched them up and bolted down the driveway barefoot, my heart pounding in my ears. As I reached the parking lot, I heard the front door slam behind me. I didn't dare look back. But by another stroke of mercy, my neighbor was outside with her husband, taking their dog out for a late-night walk. They saw me wild-eyed, trembling, clutching my keys like my life depended on it. I ran to them, babbling about how I had to go, how he'd lose his mind if I didn't leave right then. They didn't ask questions. They held my hands, calmed me down enough so I could breathe, then watched me get in my car and drive off into the night. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. But I had my freedom, and for the first time in years, that was enough. I went straight to my sister's new apartment. I stayed on her couch that first night, curled up like a child. My mom was there too. She'd flown back when she heard what was happening. I remember waking up to the smell of her coffee brewing in the tiny kitchen. She looked at me with eyes so sad but so relieved, like she'd been waiting forever for me to come back to life. But of course, he didn't stop. He called, he texted, he threatened, he promised. He played the victim to anyone who'd listen, telling them I was unstable, that I'd abandoned our marriage for no reason. He'd show up at my sister's place, banging on the door, demanding to talk. I learned to stop answering. I learned that no contact was the only way. After weeks of back and forth, he finally dropped the final blow. He said, "I just wanted to look you in the eyes one last time to tell you you're worthless without me. I want a divorce because I want you to know you'll never find anyone better than me." He was wrong. So wrong. The day I signed those papers, I swear I felt the chains fall off. But the healing, that would take years. Therapy, long nights crying on my mother's shoulder, learning to trust myself again. And even then, the worst secret of all hadn't come out yet. The truth that would make everything make sense. But that's for later. After I signed the divorce papers, I thought the worst was behind me. I really did. I tried so hard to believe that the nightmare was over, that the man who once called himself my husband was finally out of my life for good. But people like him don't just disappear. They linger like a shadow you can't shake. By then, I had started to rebuild. I met someone new, someone kind, gentle, patient. He wasn't perfect, but he was nothing like my ex. We took things slow. We became friends first, then partners. And when I found out I was pregnant, I felt this spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. I was going to be a mom for real this time. Not just a caretaker for my sister, not just a stand-in, a real mother. I carried that baby while still carrying so much pain. I worked through my entire pregnancy shifts at a coffee shop, freelance translation gigs at hospitals, side photography jobs on weekends. Every time I felt exhausted, I'd remind myself, this is for her. This is for my daughter. And when I finally held her in my arms, I knew she was my second chance. But even then, my ex found ways to reach me. He'd call from blocked numbers. He'd message mutual friends, feeding them lies about how I'd betrayed him, how I'd ruined his life. The worst was when he threatened me, directly telling me that if I ever came back to the States with my baby, I should watch both sides of the street before crossing. I'll never forget those words. They made my blood run cold. I didn't tell many people about that threat. It sounded insane. Who would believe that the man who used to buy me flowers was now warning me to watch my back like he was planning something? But deep down, I knew. I knew exactly who he was. In the middle of it all, I kept pushing forward. I had my baby girl. I had a new country to call home Ireland, far away from him, far away from his poison. I worked 3 jobs while raising my daughter alone. I went back to school, got certified as a translator, picked up barista shifts, managed a small shop. It was exhausting, but it was mine. Every paycheck felt like a brick in the wall between me and the past. He didn't stop trying to break that wall. When I wouldn't answer his calls, he'd send emails telling me I'd never be a good mother, that I'd never be enough. He told me to write a suicide note, said if I ever did it, I should leave instructions for how to send my body home. Can you imagine that? The father of your child telling you how to die? But here's the thing about women like me. We bend, but we don't break. Every time he pushed me closer to the edge, my daughter pulled me back. Her tiny hands, her baby giggles, the way she looked at me like I was her whole world that was my lifeline. I never told my parents everything back then. They knew some, but not all. My therapist knew more than anyone. She helped me see the patterns, the gaslighting, the way he'd rewritten reality to keep me trapped. When I'd slip and blame myself, she'd remind me, "You survived. That is enough." It took years to finalize the divorce. Years. He'd show up at my lawyer's office in the States, causing scenes, delaying paperwork, refusing to sign. It was like he couldn't stand the idea that I might move on without him, that I might get free for real. But he underestimated me, and he underestimated the people who loved me. The man I was with at the time, my daughter's father, stepped in. He called him, told him to back off, to sign the papers and let me go, and finally he did. I remember standing in my tiny kitchen in Dublin, holding my baby on my hip, staring at that final decree. It felt like the end of a nightmare, but I was still bracing for what came next. Because somewhere deep down, I could feel it. The truth I'd suspected for so long was still waiting in the shadows, ready to destroy what little peace I'd built. And the person who would bring that truth crashing down, the last person I ever thought would betray me that way. It all came out during the pandemic like so many buried secrets that finally see daylight when the world is forced to stand still. I was living in Ireland by then, focused on my baby girl and my new life. My ex was just a ghost or so, I thought. But some ghosts refused to stay dead. My youngest sister was still living back in Oregon, in the same small town where it all started. We'd grown distant over the years, but I always told myself it was normal. Life gets busy, we drift. But when I called, she wouldn't pick up. When I sent photos of my daughter, she wouldn't even open them. I tried to brush it off. She's working a lot, she's busy, my mom would say. But my gut kept telling me something was off. My middle sister, the only one who'd really seen the worst of what he'd done to me, called me one night and said, "Something's wrong. I can feel it." I think there's more to the story with him and our sister. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her she was crazy because that was easier than facing the truth I'd always been too afraid to say out loud. But the seed was planted. I couldn't stop replaying every moment in my mind, the late night grocery runs, the beach trip where I blacked out, the way he'd defend her over me every single time. It all made sense. It made me sick. So I called my dad. I told him straight, I think they had an affair. I think that's why he wouldn't let go. I think that's why she disappeared on us. My dad was furious. He picked up the phone and called her himself. He demanded the truth, demanded she choose family or him. The next day, she cracked. She called my aunt in tears and confessed. She'd been sleeping with him for years, even while I was still married. She didn't stumble into it. She didn't regret it. She chose it. And when my aunt told her, "You have to pick your family or this man," she said, "I choose him." My world didn't just break that day, it imploded. All those years I spent blaming myself, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough, why I couldn't fix him. The answer was living under my roof the whole time. She was my baby sister, the one I fed, protected, trusted, the one I'd loved like my own child. And they had planned it. They'd planned it all, from the mind games to the lies to the final betrayal. The worst part? She helped him do things that could have ruined me forever. Things I can't even bring myself to say out loud. I remember calling her. I wanted her to deny it, to tell me it was a lie, that it was all some misunderstanding. But she didn't pick up. He did. And when I asked him what he'd done, he laughed. "You didn't want the life I offered you, so now I'll live it with her," he said. "You think you can move on and be happy? You're nothing without me." I wish I could say I handled it with grace. But the truth is, I crumbled. I fell apart in a way I hadn't since the worst nights in that haunted apartment. I cried until my chest hurt. I clung to my daughter like she was the only real thing in a world made of glass. My therapist reminded me that this was the final cut, the truth that would finally set me free. And she was right. Because after that, there was no going back. There was no more wondering. No more hoping for apologies that would never come. They moved in together. They live as if they've built some twisted version of the family I was supposed to have. I still hear stories through the grapevine how they play house, pretending it all started after I left. But I know the truth, and that truth doesn't get to own me anymore. Because the thing about betrayal that deep is that once you survive it, you become impossible to break. The person I am now, she'd never fall for his games. She'd never let someone steal her voice again. So here I am years later, thousands of miles away from that house, that city, those people who tried so hard to break me. And guess what? I'm still standing. After the truth came out, I cut them off for good. No calls, no messages, no more hoping they'd say sorry, because the people who destroy you on purpose never apologize. They just rewrite the story to make themselves feel better, and I refuse to live in that version of reality. I built a new life, a real one. I packed up my baby girl, left the shadows of the past behind, and moved from Ireland to Finland because that was the next chapter, a fresh start. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat: translator, barista, photographer. I poured every penny into making sure my daughter would never feel the fear I felt, would never doubt her own worth the way I did for so long. And life rewarded me for surviving. I met someone who didn't see me as a thing to own or break. A man who knows every scar I carry, every ghost I've had to bury, and loves me more because of it, not despite it. He's gentle where the last one was cruel. He listens where the last one silenced me. He stands beside me, not in front of me, blocking my light. We got married last year, nothing fancy, just love and family and our promise to protect each other no matter what. Now we have this beautiful, wild, blended family. 5 kids under one roof, laughter in every room. Some days are chaos, but it's the kind of chaos I used to pray for when I was lying awake in that haunted house, too afraid to sleep. My ex and my sister? They still exist. They still try to pop up in my mind sometimes, those old echoes of guilt and shame and betrayal. But they don't get to own my story anymore. They're a chapter I survived, not the ending. And maybe that's why I'm telling this now. Because there's a woman out there who thinks she's crazy, who's trying to hold a crumbling marriage together while she doubts her own mind. Maybe she's sitting alone in a room right now, wondering why her shoes keep disappearing, why nothing feels real, why the person who promised to love her feels more like a prison guard than a partner. To her and to the girl I used to be, I say this: you are not too much. You are not broken. You are not the problem. You are enough. And no matter how deep they try to bury you, you can get back up. You can rebuild. You can choose yourself. You can leave. And when you do, the world that felt so small and suffocating will open up like a sunrise, slow, warm, undeniable. Today, I get to live for me. I get to wake up beside a man who respects me, laugh with my children in a home that is mine, make my own choices, speak my truth. And no matter how much they wanted to silence me, I'm still here. Still speaking, still loving, still free.